So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little bit of a two-toned ink drawing, then I'm going to let it dry. And then I'm going to add some color to it. I could add the color first. I could add the color as part of the process. There's lots of ways I could work this. So I'm going to, since I'm going to have, I might want to use my ink, my brown ink wash that I made to do my picture of a brown bottle. So what I will start with is I'll be bad. And I am going to use pencil as opposed to just jumping straight in. But no, how about that one there? Only one brush, because I'm actually going to put the brush into my picture. Me doing my sort of quick gestural drawing that I oftentimes do. If you think about, if you were to take a drawing class from me, I talk about that being part of the measuring process, trying to get the approximate sizes and shapes, like looking at this and thinking, well, that bottle is actually bigger, so I'm comparing that to that, but I'm looking at the angle that they line up at, like there, and then sort of a curve, and this one is a rounded bottle on the bottom, a little more round. It's not, the whole base isn't flat, there's a curving upward, just like this one has that the exact opposite, curving downward, and then it's got a little foot underneath that you don't quite see. And see, I've noticed this, I've actually done something that I say don't do. The spacing is almost identical on both sides.
Just move your frame.
I'm gonna have to move the frame. Yes, that's exactly right. I'm thinking, this one stays exactly where it is, but then this is the stronger line. Darn it, which one do I do, which one do? But you're right, that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm thinking, bring it in here, and bring it out here. There is no question now that it is not, they still occupy the center of the page, but it's more to this side. Now I have a stronger, and look at this, as I do that, I'm pushing it even further. Okay, and then I do have a bit of a shadow here, and then I'm thinking, how much more drawing do I need to do? Probably not much, if any. Okay, so now I've got the beginnings of a drawing here in pencil. And that's there, but then you know what? Yeah, that'll be good. Right there is where the brush is. Angle. It's pretty good. But right there, I'm looking at where it's lining up. Okay, so if that would be there, okay, it's got part of the ferrule here. So this is an old-fashioned trick that a lot of artists would do. They finding a way to bring you into the picture. Plein air painters do that all the time. It's a very classic approach to doing this. And then there's the top of the table, which it's way up there. I will probably, just simply for the sake, I'm gonna drop it and then use that. So now I've got this angle here. I'm moving into the picture. I'm leaving all this other stuff out. So now what I wanna do though, is I'm not gonna do washes. I'm going to use dry brush, which is actually a way of doing, it's a wet brush, but it's not super wet everywhere. And what I'm going to need for that right away is two things. I'm going to need some water. It's a wet brush, John, and a dry brush. You still need to be able to rinse your brush out occasionally. So here, I'm also going to pour a little bit of ink out. You might go, well, why?
Because that's India ink.
This is Sumi ink, which is basically the Japanese version of India ink. Because the bottle is my subject. Don't want it open.
Oh.
That's the only reason. See, sometimes you think there's a magical reason, and sometimes it's just totally practical. So I'm going to start with, let's start with this brush, actually. I need it, I think. Now, it doesn't hurt to occasionally just get the feel of what a brush is doing. I touch lots of brushes. I'm just seeing what my brush is, how it's going to work with the paper. So I'm just getting a little bit of sense of that. And now, it really was there. Okay. So I will start with some very typical, just wet brush marks. Coming down. And then over here, there's a little dark line on the bottom of the black. And then it's thicker and heavier dark here. And then there is the label. Okay, so now I've got wet marks, and I've got this, you can tell this is gonna, I put it down with the brush leaning against the paper. So if this is a dark mark, then sometimes if you lean it a little bit and pull it out, you're gonna get a grayer mark. But you can also see now that the brush is becoming a little less wet, I'm getting grayer marks, and they're more broken. And if I wanna play with that a little bit, which I do, I'm thinking, yeah, how about the space in between here, which has got some shadow? How about I some more shadow in it? So I could, with my brush being damp, I can use this to both give myself very clean, wet lines, but also some shading with gray. How about that label is brown, so it's not as dark. So how about and then contrasted with the much darker bits of near black.
So you've only dunked once or twice?
I think I've dunked twice total. And as the brush begins to dry out, notice the tip is still pretty wet and black, but as I push down further, here I'm sort of following the contour of the object that I'm looking at. Imagine your eye following the contour of the surface in a straight line. I'm dipping in for more fluid here because I want maybe a more fluid, completely black line. And then I'm going to come in and okay. A wash would be much more even. The dry brush, not so dry brush on the end. because the brush is actually designed to deliver the liquid whether I want it to be delivered or not. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to use that darker stuff and use some of that dark ink that's wet up a little bit. I'm thinking I'll use it here where those ribs are they're made it so that you can grip the lid and get it off easily. Thinking maybe, yeah, that would be good. Told you, it ends up looking a lot like some charcoal or a Conte crayon or a really dark pencil with the kind of very sort of dry shading stuff. And you do have to pay a little bit of attention to the mark that it makes as soon as you start, because sometimes it'll be wetter than you want it to be and more of a solid black as opposed to the dry stuff that you're looking at here. But now, how am I going to paint the brush that I'm working with? So I guess I'll have to lie.
So I guess the benefit of doing this dry brush with the ink as opposed to using like charcoal or Conte or something is that you can come in with color afterwards.
Absolutely. I can come in with very wet material, or I could come in with, like you said, the Conte or char. You can come with all kinds of other stuff. My plan here, actually, is not to come in with liquid. I have another material I'm going to show you could try to use. So here I'm actually just getting a little extra dark. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. I'm experimenting, right? I don't know for a fact that this is the best way to make this work, but it feels sort of like it might be right, but the fact that I'm telling you that it might not be says that maybe I'm also having some second thoughts as I'm doing it. You've never had that happen to you, I know. Whether you're gardening or doing food or drawing. Okay, so look how soft I can get that. And then maybe a little bit of some like hatching. You could do hatching with a brush, whether it's dry or wet. Really should have been darker up here if I'm going to do that. Okay. Now, if I wanted to do a wash, I could easily bring a wash in, which might be kind of fun up against all that. And that stuff dries pretty quickly, and you could do a wash. And don't be afraid if I jump in and do a little wash later. But what I really want to do is not that. I'm going to use the leads from watercolor crayons. I mean, watercolor pencils. This is one of my favorite brands. You can't buy them this way anymore. For a long time, they sold them just as the leads, and they wanted to sell you their mechanical holders. And then you're thinking, well, do you want to change the lead each time into the holder? No, they want you to buy 5 or 6 holders, and you have one for all your reds, one for all your blue. That was an exorbitant price point. But it's Caran. It's a Swiss company that has really good, intense color. And you'll see how intense it is in just a minute. Can you do me a minor favor? No, don't. Yes. Could I get somebody to give me some water? I need some clean water in a minute. So I'm going to come in here, and I have a green. This is the problem that you're going to have with all of your watercolor pencils, just like you're thinking, I don't have the right green. That looks sort of like the right green. I have a very limited number. I think I have 4 or 5 warms and 4 or 5 cool colors. Thank you. So I'm not going to do right this minute. I'm not going to wet that, but I might want to. This is my inky brush. Now I have to pick up this one. Guess I can put that one over there. case I want. Don't do that. So, no, I don't need a brush. What am I doing? Hush, John. Confusing yourself. Here we go. So I'm going to, this will be no surprise, I want some green in there.
And you want to use the water color pencil so that you can bring in a wash on top.
Maybe, or I can leave it dry. I don't have any non-water soluble dry material with me today. Now here's what I'm going to say. I could be done. I probably wouldn't be done. I would probably want to do one slightly different thing. I'm thinking I would probably like to bring in some brownish color over here. You think, well, why not in the ink on the other side? That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm setting that up. This is a burnt umber color, which I think will be a pretty good estimation of, if not the ink, but instead the label. Now, after doing this right here, what I'm thinking is there anything else that I need to put more ink on before I go anywhere else? But I think kind of, this will be a slight bit of that brown down here. It's not really a brown brush, it's a reddish brown brush, which means, yeah, an orangey brown, orangey red, just a touch. Do I have color? Yes.
So just a question about the color. So you've already shaded with your ink.
In this case, I have, yes.
Your green, where you opted to put the green, did you choose that because of the shading aspect of it, or just for the color?
I just wanted the color.
Arbitrary color placement.
Oh, it wasn't so much arbitrary. If you're on this side, there's a lot more light green over here. There's lights on the green. It's much darker green and going around a little bit. It's darker. So what I'm actually thinking about is I might come in and do this. Now this is a little dangerous. I've never been known to do anything dangerous before. I'm going to come in. This is going to wet the ink, so I have to be really careful. What I'm thinking about is coming in and putting just a little bit more black. So I've covered up some of the black. So I'm coming in with just a little bit of a light touch of black on top. So, and then I've done that and thinking, maybe I've done too much. So take some of it back off, maybe. And then I come back and go, well, I'm not so sure I like that. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, sometimes you go, what I really don't like is the green down there being so strong. So what I'm doing here is I'm spreading some of the green that's down there out.
Some of the green out.
Pulling some of the green out, and then I'm going to come back in with the cleanup water and add a little bit of gray. And then if I did it there, maybe I might want to do it a little bit someplace else. And if you're going to do that, I know a little bit about these particular crayons, but it's helpful to have tried it out. So that's the thing. See, I've wet it, I pulled it out, and now I'm even pulling some of that off. Here's what I would know. I would not have done that if I had not already done this before a bunch of times. I mean, look how brilliant that color can get. But when that brilliant color mixes with the gray, I get a nice olivey green. So trying that out a little bit, yes. My biggest problem right this minute is I'm thinking, I still think that that is too strong. What? Remember you were asking about the shading? Sometimes I really want my shading to be really delicate up against really bold. So I'm just kind of wishing I didn't have that green there. I may have taken my green too far. Does this make sense? I've taken something too far. Does it make it bad? No, but does it make it what I want? No, it's not. I am thinking that I really do want that to be darker, but I don't want it to be a ton darker. I want it to be overall darker, but I don't want to make it, no, I don't want to make it completely black. Oh, now here I'm adding just a little bit of wash, but it's got a little bit of green in the bottle from the, oh no, that green, too much. Okay? So I was very selective of where I put my color. But when you get ready to if you put some color in, test out your color. See what happens when you dry blend it. See what happens when you wet it. Even if it's not a water soluble thing, it might move a little bit. So whatever color you've got, color pencils, test out a color pencil to see if they are in fact a little bit soluble. Different colors, different pigments are more soluble in and of themselves, even if the thing they're in, clay, oil, water-soluble oils, just dry pigment with glue in them, kind of glue in them. The same material with different pigments will have a different water-soluble level, because some colors are water-phobic, if you will, and some of them are water-loving. They just do it. So always do a little test area on a separate sheet or here. And I would say this is not too terribly terrible. Though I might think maybe that just doesn't make any sense, so I'm going to bring some of that over here, because that red will be nice with the brown. Ooh, apparently I really like the brown. In fact, I will use that brown. Careful, John, don't overdo it. I am so prone to overdo it. The thing I beg you guys not to do, I am so guilty of. But I think, ooh, but you know what I can use? I can use some of that brown over here maybe to modulate, use some of that, and use a touch of that red to modulate the green that's here and turn that into a gray. It does help. But I picked up the green again, darn it. Okay, fine. If I'm going to pick up that much green, I'm going to bring a little more out. Okay. Notice, but my bottle does not look radically green. It's black and green. It's mostly green, and we read it as a green bottle. Okay? I'm thinking, okay, famous last words. This is the last thing I'm going to do. I'm just wanting to get that feeling, and I think I have to let it dry a little bit to come in over here and clean up that edge on that side. And I also have to do some erasing. Does this make sense, guys? You think you can do some of that? Go for it.